Hey, what's up everybody? It's Izzy from PowerliftingToWin.com, and today we're going to talk about how to bench like a powerlifter. In the last article, we talked a lot about the theory behind bench pressing, why you should have a big arch, why you should use a big grip, things like that. We discussed moment arms and their application to the sport of powerlifting as a whole, but specifically the bench press. If you don't know what a moment arm is, I'm going to have you go ahead and just go to the description box and check out part 1 of this series, a video I made called Powerlifting Leverages, which describes everything you need to know to really understand the analysis that I'm going to use for the rest of this video. So let's go ahead and talk about how we actually bench press. So the bench press can really be split up into 2 phases, the setup and the execution. Because the setup comes first and it's a little bit more complicated, we're going to start right there. So the first bench press setup subject we're going to cover is the bench press grip. So one of the most common mistakes on the bench press is to gripping the bar incorrectly and putting it in the wrong part of the hand. Some people are going to exaggerate this error more than others, but a lot of powerlifters do not put the bar where it should go in the hand. Here's the thing. If you put the bar far back in the hand, you're creating a moment arm between the wrist and the bar, because the bar is sitting back in the hand and the force is being transferred through the wrist. So if the wrist is bent or the bar is just far enough away from the heel of the palm, you're losing force transfer. So the number one priority in terms of grip is getting the bar as close to the heel of your palm as possible. So we're going to do a grip demonstration here. Here's the incorrect grip with the bar on the back of the hand, and here is the correct grip, rotating the hand and putting the bar right at the heel of the palm there. So let's take one more look at the correct grips here. On the left, you can see the incorrect grip with the bar sitting in the meaty part of the hand. This is where most people grip the bar. They don't allow their wrists to bend all the way back like my first example, but this is still not maximum efficiency. On the right, you can see that the hand is slightly rotated so that the bar sits in the crease of the palm there, right next to the heel of the palm. The closer we get the bar to the wrist, the more we can minimize that lever arm between the wrist and the bar, and that's going to directly translate to more weight being lifted. Okay, so the next topic we're going to cover is scapular retraction, what you need to be doing with your shoulder blades during the bench. Okay, here's a short demonstration. Here's my scapulas completely extended, and here they are completely retracted. Boom, and that's the position we want to bench from. In order to produce this scapular retraction, all you really need to do is think about pinching your shoulder blades together. If you still can't get it, have someone stick a finger just right in between your shoulder blades and try to grab their finger with your shoulder blades, and you'll pretty much get the right idea. What this does is it tightens the upper back and gives us a more stable position to press from. It also effectively decreases the lengths of the arms. Take a look. So on the right over there, you can see this is a side view of me when my scapulas are completely extended there. So I have no scapular retraction whatsoever. And on the left, my scapulas are fully retracted. You can see that this cuts off a good 2 to 3 inches of range of motion, which is a huge deal. So make sure you get your shoulder blades pulled back and tight. So next we're going to talk about bench press head and foot position. It's important to note that there are many federations which do not allow you to have your heels up or for you to lift your head. And in that case, you can't even use a head up or a heels up position anyways. But for those of you that lift in federations that do allow a lifted head or a raised heel, you have some choices to make. Should you have your heels tucked way behind you, or your feet tucked way behind you and lift your head on the way down? Or should you have your feet out in front of you and keep your head flat on the bench? Well, I think it primarily depends on your bench press style. And what I mean by that is, are you more of a straight line bencher, or are you more of a guy who touches real low in terms of his chest? So do you touch far away from the shoulders, or do you touch real close to the shoulders? Let me give you an example. Okay, so here you can see the 2 primary styles of benching that we've covered thus far. On the left, you have the lower touch point, but the higher touch point, right? And on the right, you have the straighter bar path, but the lower touch point, the slightly longer range of motion. And you'll notice that in the left, the heels are tucked back, whereas on the right, they're forward. And there's a good reason for that. When you tuck your heels back and arch using that method, you're going to get a greater overall arch. Take a look at the hip position on the left versus the right. The hips are far more extended on the left. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to put your hips in a position of hyperextension, which more easily allows you to put your entire lower body into hyperextension. So your lower back especially is going to be more extended. However, what that does is it does tend to create a true arch, like a bridge type arch. And you'll see that it actually depresses the upper chest. Right? It raises the sternum and the stomach area, making that an even better touch point. But when you do use that kind of arch, it depresses the chest. Whereas on the right, you'll notice that with the feet flat and the hips not fully extended, you can have the chest a little higher, because what this allows you to do with your feet out in front a little bit is you can push your weight back onto your traps. So instead of shoving your weight straight down through your heels, you can push forward and back and roll onto your traps a little bit, which drives your chest up. So for the straight line bencher, the guy who wants to have that shorter moment arm, even though it's a slightly longer range of motion, I recommend that you have your feet more out in front of you and you keep your head down. Whereas for the guy who's going to touch real low and try to minimize the range of motion as much as possible, you need to get the biggest arch that you can. And in order to get the biggest arch, you need to tuck your feet behind you as far as your flexibility will allow. Okay, so now it's time to answer the big question. How do we set up an arch on the bench press? There's really 1,000 different ways that you can do it that are all slightly different, but I'm going to show you what I think are the two main ways used to set up a big arch on the bench press: the slide through method and the feet up on the bench method. Okay, so we're going to start with the slide through method. First, you put your body on the front side of the bar, and you want your heels as close to the head of the bench as possible because you're trying to keep them as tucked as possible. Next, you're going to push, using the bar as leverage, push the bar into the rack so you can push yourself out into an arch just like that. Now let your feet come forward only as much as they need to, then push into the rack to finish setting up the arch. So here's kind of the picture version of what we just saw. So yeah, you can see here all the different steps, right? First you set your grip, you go to the front side of the bar, you push the bar into the rack to lever yourself out into a big arch, then drive your shoulders as close to your ass as you can on the way down. And then before you're done, remember to push yourself into the uprights, because what this is going to do is it's going to slide your shoulders closer to your heels. And the farther your heels are behind you, the more your hips are going to be extended. And if your hips are not fully extended, you run the risk of your butt coming off of the bench when you use leg drive, especially with the heels up method. So make sure that you push into the uprights and get those hips fully extended. I'm going to show you guys the method one more time with no interruptions. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the feet up method, and it's really a lot what the name sounds like. You put your heels up on the bench there, and what you're going to do is you're going to bridge, literally on the bench. You just drive your feet into the bench, bridge up, pin your shoulder blades together, and then you're going to kick back one leg at a time, just like that. And just like before, we're going to push into the arch a little bit more, and boom, that's the feet up method. So again, I'll show you a picture of it and then show you the full thing one more time. So we start with setting our grip, then we bring our feet up onto the bench, we bridge and pin our scapulas together. Once we've got ourselves into a nice bridge, we kick back one leg at a time, making sure to kick that foot back as far as you can. Once you've got both feet kicked back, you're going to go ahead and use the uprights to push into the arch more. Because again, what that does is it gets your heels or your feet closer to your shoulders, which leaves your hips more extended. And the more extended your hips are, the less chance of your ass coming off of the bench, which is kind of a big deal because it'll automatically disqualify your lift. So take a look at the feet up method one more time. So there's really two ways to use leg drive. What leg drive is it's simply you pushing your feet into the floor to tighten up your whole body. That's all it does. So when you push your feet into the floor, it extends your hips, it makes your arch a little better, it pushes your chest higher. And like I said, there's two ways to generally use it. One is if you have your head down and your feet flat and your feet out in front of you, you're actually not going to use leg drive to push up. You're going to use leg drive to push back. Because what you were trying to do is push your weight onto your traps. And that's going to raise your upper chest more, because if you're a straight line bencher, you touch on your upper chest, you don't touch on your lower chest, so you don't even want that necessarily that huge gymnast's arch. The second way to use leg drive is for the lower touch point style bench with a bigger arch. And what you're going to do with this is you're actually going to drive straight up, right? And that what that does when you push your heels straight down and drive straight up with your hips is it tends to give you a little more tightness and pop off of the chest, and it really reinforces that arched position. Okay, so when the feet are out in front of you and you're pushing your weight onto your traps, it drives up your upper chest. But when you push straight down, it just reinforces the whole arch, and it's a great way to get tight. So I'm going to show you both methods and kind of what they look like. Okay, so method number one is driving straight down with your heels, and you can tell that just lifts your butt up into the air if your hips aren't fully extended. You'll notice that my butt doesn't stop going up until the hips are at full extension. But you'll see that the type of arching effect that it has, right? It's really raising my lower back and that lower part of the chest. And that's why lifters who have that lower touch point use this style of leg drive. One thing to note about leg drive is that it's really something that you should be doing throughout the entire lift. It's not intermittent. You want to stay tight throughout the whole lift, so you should be pushing against the ground throughout the whole lift. Next, I want to show you the other type of leg drive where you're really driving back onto your traps. Watch how the leg drive here actually pushes me back along the bench. See, that normally wouldn't happen when you have enough weight. So if you're holding weight in your hands and you push back like that, your traps are pinned to the bench by the weight. So what happens is it just drives that upper chest up, which decreases the range of motion for those straight line benchers. Okay, so again, here is an example of using leg drive just in this setup. Because a lot of people think of leg drive as something that you only do during the lift. But again, in my opinion, leg drive is something that is not intermittent. You use leg drive from the setup all the way through the finish of the lift. Take a look at the left. Notice how much higher the heel is off of the ground, how the hips aren't as extended, and how the chest isn't up as much. Well, look at the right. When I'm pushing with my legs and I'm getting that leg drive, my hips are more extended, my heels are closer to the ground, and my chest is way higher. That's cutting down my range of motion. It's increasing my tightness. Why would you want to do any part of the lift without full tightness? Don't wait until you start pressing the bar back up to use leg drive. Leg drive is something to be used throughout the whole lift. So for whatever reason, the use of the lats and the bench press is a highly debated topic in powerlifting right now. We're not going to touch on that here, but what we are going to touch on is why you should be aware of your lats during the bench press and why you should actively contract them and how to do that. So first, I'm going to go ahead and show you what it actually looks like when the lats are tight versus when they're loose. The main reason you want to contract your lats is because when you contract a muscle, it pulls at both ends and becomes shorter. So because the lat is the muscle that's one of the biggest muscles between, our ass and our shoulders during the bench press, if we contract that muscle and make it shorter, it brings our butt and our shoulder closer together. And when we do that, it increases our arch. And you can really see how evident that is by looking at the left picture where I'm not flexing my lats and then looking at the right picture where I am flexing my lats. My chest is higher and my range of motion is decreased. When you start combining this with a wider grip, a good arch technique, and leg drive, you can see how much it really takes off of your range of motion. Next, if you don't know how to actually contract your lats, I'm going to give you guys a great cue for how to do that. So one of the best cues I ever heard for teaching you how to actively engage your lats during the bench press is called break the bar. And when you say break the bar, I mean, I don't know if people know what you're talking about. So all it really means is just rotating your hands, right? Getting that internal rotation of the arm there, and you're just actively pretending like you're trying to snap the bar in half, and you can see the picture right there demonstrates it really well. And when you do this, it's going to help you engage those lats, and when the lats are tight during the bench press, it brings the shoulders and the butt closer together, which raises your chest height and decreases your range of motion. And plus, overall tightness, as we've been saying again and again, the tighter you are, the better your force transfer, the more weight you lift. One of the most important cues for geared benching is tucking your elbows. And this is because geared benchers, the shirt helps them so much that at the bottom anyways, that a super low touch point with a high amount of tuck actually doesn't harm them. Whereas for a raw lifter, the more you tuck, the more you take your chest and shoulders out of the movement and make it more triceps. And here's the thing. Geared benchers are tucking that much because they're trying to decrease the range of motion. The more they can decrease the range of motion, the easier it is to touch in their shirt. And the easier it is to touch in their shirt, the tighter the shirts that they can wear, and so they get more carryover from the shirt that way. But for raw benchers, you don't need to focus on tucking, and in fact, an over focus on tucking is actually going to create unnecessary moment arms that make the lift harder. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so on the left, we have a great example here of somebody who's over tucking, and they're trying to keep their elbows so close to their body that their elbow has actually outpaced their wrist and the bar. And when the elbow and the wrist are not in line and the bar is being carried in the wrist, you're creating a moment arm between the elbow joint and the bar. And again, moment arms increase the amount of overall leverage that we have to overcome to complete the lift. So we don't want to focus on any sort of a cue that's going to create moment arms. And when you over tuck, that's exactly what happens. Don't focus on tucking as a raw lifter, in my opinion. You need to focus on just what your touch point is and being tight. You can even see on the right another example of what can happen sometimes when you let the bar drift forward of the elbow, right? And in this case, it's really a similar, it's a different problem, but the same result, right? Because you create a moment arm between the bar and the elbow, and we don't want to create moment arms. It makes the lift unnecessarily hard. So what's the takeaway? Keep your elbows under your wrists as a raw lifter. One of the last technique issues that I want to address is something called sinking, okay? Sinking the bar basically works like this. Instead of holding the bar at your chest, at the bottom of the bench, you let it actually sink into the soft tissues and the bony structures of the sternum. Now, the reason why a lot of lifters do this is because when they do this, they also simultaneously loosen up their lower body. And what this does is as soon as they give the press command, they jolt their lower body tight really quickly, and it creates a rebound effect off of those soft tissues and bony structures. And so it gives you a nice little pop off of the chest. But the problem is that you have to get loose in order to execute this technique. And when you're getting loose under a heavy load, you're decreasing overall force transfer. So the reason that these guys do this is because if they have a weakness at the bottom, sometimes it can be worth it to use an inefficient technique to get past their weak points. In my opinion, I don't approve of this method because you can correct a weak point through careful programming and assistance exercises, and that way you can use a technique that is more efficient without having to make these sort of sacrifices. Because as a lifter, your weak points will change over time. So if you fix your weak point off of the bottom, but you're still using the sink and heave technique, well, you're going to have to overhaul your entire technique now because you're not going to get any benefit out of it anymore, and you're still going to get all the disadvantages of being loose, of not having a very predictable bar path, and all of that. So I highly recommend that instead of sinking, that you stay tight. Just so you guys know what I'm talking about, I'm going to show you a video of Dan Green. And just so you guys don't get carried away, I'm not necessarily saying that Dan is wrong for doing this. I'm sure he's experimented very extensively to select this technique. It's just, and it might be worth it for you to experiment as well. But in my opinion, for the long run, this is not the most efficient technique that you can pick. Let's take a look. Okay, I really want you to watch Dan's lower body carefully here. He's going to let the bar sink down into his chest, and he's also going to relax his legs. Look. And now he's going to fire the legs and everything all at once. You see how all of his weight shifted back? He's getting a pop off of the chest, but you see that sticking point right out the middle? That's where the whip and the unpredictable bar path come into play. So like I said, I'd rather not see you guys sinking and heaving, especially if for no other reason, because some judges will actually red light it, even though it's not against the rules. Experiment with it if you want, but the bottom line is that in order to execute this technique, you have to get loose and then slam everything tight all at once, and it's just not a predictable way to get a reliable bar path. Okay, to wrap this up, I'm going to give you guys a demonstration of the technique that I've been talking about this whole time. I'm going to bring it all together, and we'll look at all the most important steps one more time just to really crystallize the process in your mind. Okay, so first we start with our setup. We get our grip, and we start setting our arch. Once we get that arch set, and you have to start remembering all of your cues for getting tight. So you need to squeeze the bar as hard as you can. You need to bend the bar to engage the lats. You need to take a huge breath to get as tight as you can. And then on top of all that, you need to also use leg drive to get even tighter. Now, we're going to lower down here for a hold pause, not a sink pause. Boom, slam the head back down, drive it up. So I'll put a picture up of this so we can just go a little bit slower on it. Remember, you always got to set your grip first, and the next step is going to be to set that arch, and that's really the whole setup phase, right? And then we kind of have an in-between phase where it's not really setup or execution, but it's still very important, and that's where we squeeze the bar as tight as we can to really engage the forearms and the upper body. We bend the bar to get those lats engaged. We actively push leg drive so we can get our chest higher, we can get tighter, and then we take that huge breath to top off the tightness, right? And then on our pause, we make sure that you focus on the touch point. In this picture, I've shown an example of a low touch point, right? So it's minimizing range of motion in exchange for a little bit longer moment arm between the bar and the shoulder. If you had a straight line bench, it would look a little different. The feet would be out in front of you. You'd be pushing back onto the traps, but all the other cues would be the same. You'd squeeze the bar, you'd bend the bar, you'd take big breath, and you'd use your leg drive. And as soon as you get that press command, you just drive with everything you have to get it locked out. Well, guys, I hope that was helpful. I'm going to put a few links in the description box for you. I wrote a very comprehensive article on the subject, so if you'd like to see the same thing in a little bit more detail, with more writing, more theory, more evidence to back up the claims, go ahead and check out the article in the description box. If you'd like some links to the previous parts of this series, those are also going to be in the description box, so make sure you check that out. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask. I read all the comments, and I try to answer all of them as well. Again, I hope that helped. And as always, check out powerliftingtowin.com for more great powerlifting information. Have a good one.